up? Are you filming today or what? You do want to film? Sweet. We're back. Ew. Oh, that stinks. Take two. We're back. Okay, take three. We're back. The headless YouTuber doing headless planty things with her trusty Pug Pudge, back with another video. So today is lazy moss pole making day / repot. I'm excited for this one because I've actually been needing to make some poles for some plants that are begging for it, but I put it off for as long as I can, but now the moment has arrived. I am going to be working on my table and we're just gonna start making some poles. Okay, good job. So before we get started, I just want to kind of give you a quick rundown on what is going to happen today and the plants that I'm going to be working on. So obviously I'm going to be making some lazy moss poles, but I do need to like repot and propagate as well and get all of these plants on new lazy poles. One plant that I'm going to be working on today is this Philodendron Sp that has clearly outgrown its current lazy pole. If you're wondering what a lazy pole is, here it is. It is nothing special or fancy. I honestly don't even know why I'm doing a tutorial on it because it's pretty self-explanatory, but we're here and we're gonna do it anyway. But this one has grown so fast. Honestly, like from here upward is probably like 2 weeks of growth. Like I've just been stunned at how fast this plant has been climbing this thing. So I asked Instagram what I should do. I said, should I chop it and replant the top on a new pole so that I can beef up the size, or should I leave it and extend the pole? But the majority vote was to extend it and to not chop. But honestly, you guys, I think I'm gonna do it just because I do like the sizing up that we're seeing here, and it's not focusing. Why aren't you focusing? Okay, maybe it doesn't like that leaf. I do like the progress that I'm making in terms of like the sizing up, but I don't want to extend it more. Like it's already kind of ridiculous looking, and honestly I would love to have more of this plant without needing to buy more. So I'm thinking I might chop like starting right here, and then I can propagate all of this down here and have more. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think I might chicken out last minute, but that is the plan for now. Another plant I'm gonna be working on today is this Philodendron Sp Colombia, which is still in the original pot that I got it from when I got it from Lauren at North Shore Tropicals. But despite being extremely root bound and literally like coming out of the bottom and not having a pole, I'm just really appreciative of how easygoing it's been and how much new growth it's given me. When I first got this plant, I think it only had 2 leaves, maybe two or three, I can't remember. But I'm seeing some growth on this stem and it's getting a lot thicker, which is really exciting. And it's kind of set up a perfect angle for me to get it on a pole. So I'd like to see some root action over here. So I'm gonna have to clean up the chonk a little bit, or I'm gonna have to clean up the stem a little bit, and then I'll get it on a pole. But this leaf is brand new and it is beautiful. So this is another one I'm gonna be doing, and I'm showing you this all now because I'm gonna be working at my table and it's really hard to show you guys what I'm working on at the angle that it is when I set it up over here. So I just want to give you a good view of all the plants before we get started. And then the last plant that I'm going to be working on is my newest acquisition. This is a Philodendron Squamaqual, and I literally just picked this up a few days ago, but you can see the situation here isn't great. It's in a little plastic cup, which I don't mind at all, but the pole is a little bit too big for the cup, and it's just, there's a lot of things happening here that I need to fix. So I do want to get this repotted. I want to take a look at what the stem looks like under there. I want to get this on a new pole, a lazy pole. Basically, I'm going to be getting rid of, not getting rid of, but all of my current poles that are designed like this. I think I'm done with it. And I will tell you why in a bit once we start making the lazy poles. Just a quickie, no, not a quickie. So before I get started, I just want to quickly explain my reasoning for wanting to switch to these lazy moss poles. This is sort of the standard or like typical moss pole design. It's usually like cylindrical like this or like round, and it's on a bamboo stick, and you stuff a bunch of moss in there, and then like the roots can go into it and really latch on. And while I do think it's a great design, I've had some good success with getting plants to really beef up in size with that kind of pole. I'm not a fan of the process of once the plant outgrows that pole, because once it like really gets into the moss and starts wrapping around this wire, going through double layers of mesh, it's a mess. And I find that in all the times that I've tried to disassemble it, it's just been like chaos, and I break roots, which defeats the purpose of the moss pole in the first place. Sometimes I have to actually dismantle this whole thing and cut it up, and I can't reuse the mesh. And overall, I feel like it's a good design once you're getting the plant going, but then once it's going, it's like, okay, now what? So with the lazy moss pole, I like that, for one, it is not enclosed at all. And I get that that's probably not like the typical moss pole design style or what people are used to seeing, but I love the fact that this is going to be way more easier to remove and get onto a new pole, but it's still able to perform like moss pole would. You can't really see it here, but this one has definitely rooted into the pole now. Where is it? You can see a little rooty guy. Can you? Oh yeah, right there. Here's a little root right here. And obviously I'll be able to show you kind of the root situation once we remove it from here. But honestly, all it takes is just removing all this Velcro and then just slowly pulling apart the moss and just pulling this part back. And then we don't have to deal with the double layers and the roots being stuck inside of here, and it's just overall easier. And I call it the lazy moss pole because it's like, it's a lot easier to put together and it's a lot easier to take apart. That is the primary reason why I'm going to be moving to these kinds of poles. I'd also love to reuse things that I'm using for these poles a lot easier without having to like shred it up just to like get it off the current plant. So, you know, all these Velcro ties can be reused. It'll be really easy to reuse this mesh, and I don't need to cut it up or anything. All of this moss can be reused. So in general, I just feel like this kind of moss pole design makes the most sense for me. And last year, Alice and I were, we follow a lot of plant people out in Singapore, and they were starting to show these like D-style poles, and they were made out of plastic, and they were made for soil poles. So the back was just like a clear plastic with no mesh, and then just mesh in the front so that the roots could come through, but you could fill it with soil and then it wouldn't fall out of the mesh. And we were like, oh my gosh, that is genius. And at the time when we first saw it, yeah, back in like the summer of last year, we didn't have it available here, or they weren't like a company yet, they weren't shipping out to the States. So we had contemplated ways to like make our own poles and like try and replicate it, but we just never got around to it. So now that so many of our plants are needing to be on poles, it was kind of the time. So I'm gonna throw up Alice's video where she talks about how she makes her D-shaped pole. She got a lot of inspiration from Terrence at Plantstica. I love him, and I love his account, and I love the way he grows his plants. I love the way he edits photos, and he's just one of my favorites on Instagram. So yeah, I would love to obviously do a soil pole, but at the same time, I'm not 100% convinced that I would switch all of my plants to these purely plastic poles, and mostly because I want to use a pole that I can easily make myself and not need to like buy a new pole every time I need it. So I am gonna be missing one thing today, which is my clear plastic, which I would have loved to have, and I'll explain what I would have used it for, but my husband is sick and I don't want to see Alice because that would be very irresponsible of me. So we're just gonna do it without the plastic, but I can still do everything I need to do today. Maybe I'll just do a follow-up video maybe in a couple weeks to show you how I would add like a clear plastic so that you could potentially use something like soil for these like lazy moss poles. But anyway, I'm talking too much, so I'm gonna turn you around and let's get started. All right, so what you're gonna need for your lazy moss pole is some kind of netting. And I just got this on Amazon. It does come in black, but I don't know. I've just since switched to these clear ones. I feel like I kind of prefer them over the black net. You'll need a bamboo pole or some kind of pole to keep the plant supported. You'll need either zip ties or like wire string or cotton thread, whatever you want to use. You'll need some prepared sphagnum moss and some Velcro tape. You can also use like burlap string too. It doesn't really matter, just whatever you prefer. I think the first thing I'm gonna work on is my Philodendron Sp Colombia, and I'm kind of nervous to work on that one because it does have a new leaf, and I try to not work on or do anything to plants that have an emergent leaf, but I feel like it's begging for a pole. I'm going to be putting the Sp Colombia in I think this is a 6-inch pot, 18 centimeters. It's 18 centimeters. I'm going to measure out how much materials I'm going to need for this size. The stem isn't very long as is, but I do want to give it some give. Not some give, but I don't want to have to make another pole for this for a while. So I'm actually thinking that the length of this as it is might be perfect for it. Yeah. Okay. I'll do it about right here. So I do like the width of this. You want to also keep in mind that it's not going to be flat like this. You're going to bend it in a little bit. So when you're measuring out how much materials you need, just keep in mind that it is going to be at a curve. So this is perfect. So the next thing you are going to do is get it onto a bamboo stick. And this is just purely for stability, to be honest, because like this is not very strong. If you're using a really hard plastic, then maybe it's fine, but I prefer a softer plastic. So I am going to be using a pole to stabilize it and to make sure that once the plant gets bigger, it'll actually have some support. I'm going to cut this bamboo stick down just a hair. So I've got my edge here, my edge shear, and come on. Okay, so I've got my edge, and now I think it's going to be the perfect size, yeah. And then I'm going to secure this pole onto the center of this mesh. Perfect. Now I just need to unpot this. I need a bowl. Oh my gosh. This is so root bound. And I do think I'm going to be moving it to soil today. It's a very exciting day. It's graduation day. Always kind of nerve-wracking, I feel. But when I do moss to soil transitions, I don't feel as nervous when I'm doing something like perlite to lechuza pon or something. I don't know, I feel like moss to perlite or moss to soil is like such a safe way to transition a plant from its like propagative state into its long-term substrate. But the question that I've gotten a few times about the Philodendron Sp Colombia is it terrestrial or does it climb? And honestly, most of the Sp Colombias that I'm seeing are climbing. I'll tell you right now that mine is definitely climbing, but when I look at the rhizome down at the bottom here, it's crawling. So I don't know. I feel like you can probably make it do whatever you want. Like I've seen people have like gloriosums climb. Anyway, I'm going to time lapse the rest of this because I am going to be sitting here forever. You guys, I am shooketh. This is the first time that I'm unpotting it since buying it. Look at the size of this chunk. Guys, that is girthy. Like, that's got some girth. Like, compare it to the stem size. Look how small this stem is. And then, bam, girth. I was not expecting that. I have two options here. I can either chop this. I can probably chop it like right here because I've got an auxiliary bud right here. I can make a new plant, and I do think the plant is going to be decent sized given that this chunk is massive. I feel like I just uncovered dinosaur bones. Or I can just leave it as is and allow this chunk to keep all the energy it has and put it into the rest of the plant. I do think I'm going to be importing another Philodendron Sp Colombia, so I think what I'm gonna do is actually just leave it and not risk any rot or anything just because this plant is growing so well. So that is the decision I'm making. I'm not gonna be chopping it. I'm gonna leave it as is. But what I do want to do is, of course, clean up this chunk because I'd love to get some more roots happening along the stem and on this chunk maybe. But like all of this sort of like black stuff I just don't like that in my substrate. I like to repot it knowing that it's like fresh and it's clean, and all of these like old sheath things are peeled off so that these roots have direct contact with my pole. I don't want anything blocking it, so I'm just going to clean this up. The chunk is clean for the most part. I actually thought the root system would be slightly more robust than this, so I think I'm going to size down a bit in terms of pot size, because I think this one is going to be a little bit too big. This is the pot size I'm going with, and I'm feeling good about it. You can see that it still has a lot of space to move around in there and grow. So what I'm going to do first is I don't know why I feel so nervous, because you're watching me. Oh my gosh, you're watching me. So I'm going to be adding some landscape fabric to the bottom, and that is because I feel like these roots are escape artists. I don't have much experience with the Sp Colombia. I've only owned it for a small amount of time, so I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I know everything about this plant. But just from what I can tell, it seems like it's very much like an alocasia. You know, alocasias love to just grow roots and no leaves. At least the Sp Colombia is giving me leaves, but I don't want those roots coming out of the bottom again. So I'm just going to prevent that by covering the drainage holes. But when you use something like landscape fabric, the water can still run through it pretty easily. So this is kind of my compromise. It's funny, it's like, I swear, I grow things so much better without drainage holes. Landscape fabric is in, and then I'll do my first layer of soil. I am gonna add some mycorrhizae to the roots. I'm going to stick my lazy moss pole inside, and I think where I'm going to place it, it's kind of given me the perfect little opportunity to put a pole right here. So that's where I'm going to put it. I'm going to stick it right here. And I'm going to put it at the edge of the pole. The edge of the pole. I always put my poles at the very edge of the pot. I'm not a fan of putting it at the center. I like that it can kind of lean back on the pot and get support. So it's in this way. And then I'm going to fill the rest with soil. Sorry, this is the most garbage angle. You can't see anything, but I swear I will show you after. Hopefully you guys can see. I am not the best at framing my angles. This is probably the worst part about YouTubing, is getting the right shots. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is take some of my Velcro tape here, and I'm gonna just go around the bottom like this, and I'm gonna pinch it in. Like that. I'm going to fill all of this with moss and get all of these aerial roots covered up. Here is our finished product. I wanted to give you guys a better angle. Gosh, this plant is just so pretty. Like, it is so photogenic, my goodness. Here's the finished pole. It's ugly. I told you it was gonna be ugly, but I just want them to grow well. I want it to be functional, and I wanna not have anxiety about needing to get it off the pole. So I've only filled enough sphagnum moss to cover the current stem. I don't need to go all the way just yet because there's nothing up there. And yeah, you just want to make sure to keep this nice and damp. Give it a good spray every day. Make sure to fertilize it, because once those aerial roots start rooting into this moss, you want to be able to fertilize whatever is up here. She's ugly, but she's going to work really well. All right, we're just going to keep moving right along here. The next thing is this Philodendron Squamaqual that I'm so excited about. I've been wanting one of these things since my friend Jane got one, and it was like destiny. That one ended up being for sale locally. I'm going to take this apart and reuse the moss that's in here, try and reuse the net. I like how soft this net is, so I'll be able to use it for something. This is my first look at the root system since buying it. I always get a little bit nervous, but I feel like I'm an easy buyer. Like, even if a plant is like in rough shape, I probably won't say anything and I'll just rehab it. Okie dokie. So just by looking at this root system here, what I can tell you about the plant is these are maybe import roots that has new roots growing from it. So I can tell it's been in Canada for at least a little bit. It's not just a fresh import. Given the size of this root system, if it's not a new propagation or like a newer propagation from another plant, then yeah, my assumption is that it's somewhat of a newer import, but acclimated enough to be sold. So I'm happy. We definitely have a long way to go for the root system, so there is no chance in heck I'm going to be moving this to soil anytime soon. I am going to get it back into moss, but maybe a moss mix. I want to get it into no drainage and maybe add a little bit of leca down at the bottom. I do want to get a pole right along here. This cataphyll is super, super teeny tiny. I'd love to get some root action come in from each node so that we can beef up this cataphyll a little bit. But I am obsessed with this fuzz. Oh my gosh. Like, it feels amazing. Oh, I love this plant so much. I'm so happy. Abigail, if you're watching, thank you so much for this plant. I think I'm gonna go with this size here. Oh, I need to make my pole. Duh. Since I'm working with a much smaller plant this time, I am not going to be doing the full bamboo stick. This one will be rigid enough to support this plant as it is, but I am going to get this bamboo stick down at the bottom just for a little bit of extra support. This is the pot I'm going to be using. So what I'll be opting for this guy is a mixture of moss, cocoa husk, and perlite. So I'm going to add some at the bottom. Oh, I'm going to wear some gloves because, ow, something's poking me. Since this little plant is so tiny still, I'm going to anchor it onto this pole just to help stabilize it a bit. The other plant could kind of stand on its own, and this one needs a little bit of help, so I'm just taking another Velcro tie and I'm going to anchor it on. My little pudgy's coming. Hey you! What's going on? What time is it? No, too early, bud. You got a whole hour. Sometimes he tries to trick me into dinner time, but... For this lazy pole, I'm not going to be pinching. I'm actually going to use it more as like a wall, like a moss wall. And then I will just pack in whatever I can up here with moss. So here is the finished product. Looks kind of crazy. I'm pretty happy with how this came out. I do need to water it and get some water down here, but now we move on to the soderoy, or the soderini, which I am terrified about. So this moss pole was slightly different. It was on a sphagnum moss pole when I started, and then when I needed to extend it, I just added the grid to it and wrapped it around instead of removing it from this moss pole and then getting it on a new one. So this is another thing you can do with these grids if you're using a sphagnum moss pole. It's way easier to extend it that way than trying to add another one of those sphagnum moss poles up top. Let's see what we're working with here. I think I'm gonna take it out of the substrate first. I'm not feeling super duper confident moving it straight to soil right away as it is. I think I am gonna move it to another mossy soil mix, and with some husk, I'm gonna use some of my pre-made husk moss and mix that with soil, just so that we can keep getting some roots on this guy, because it's very, very, very delicate right now. I did have some root breakage, but we're gonna be okay. Now to get it off of this thing, let's see what we're working with. The dismantling of a lazy moss pole. And this is why I am not going to be using these kinds of poles anymore, because it's a very painful process removing it from them, and it just undoes all the hard work that they put in. Okay, so we do have some roots along the stem, not as long as I'd like. I'm probably gonna see a little bit of stunted growth from the top after I chop it, just because we're gonna have to start this root system over again. I'm trying to decide where I want to chop it. I almost want to chop it like right here or right here. My gut is saying right here just because if I chop it here, that's still a pretty tall plant, and the point was I wanted to try and start over again. So I'm gonna go with my initial gut feeling. I think I'm gonna chop it right here and then replant this. Gosh, I'm scared. I mean, I guess I could go a little lower. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna go a little lower just to give it a better shot, because now we've got 3 nodes that have roots coming out of it. Where are my scissors? Oh, all right, I'm going. Let me just sterilize my shears really quick. I know that some people on Instagram are gonna be disappointed with me for not going with the majority vote, but I'm doing it for propagative purposes. I want more of this plant and I don't want to spend the money. Here we go. I'm gonna do it. That was terrifying. Rooting hormone. I'm also gonna dip the actual roots in it too. Okay. Oh my, that was scary. I'm going to let this callus for a little bit before I get it repotted. So now I have this guy to deal with. I think what I'm gonna do is chop it into either 2 or 3 plants. So this plant is just so pretty. It looks so beautiful on camera too. So I think I'm gonna chop this into 3 because I want to create more of a bush rather than like a single plant, because that's what this other guy will be for. So I'm gonna chop it right here and maybe in between these 2. And this is the little bottom cutting. Oh my gosh, okay. So while that's callusing, I'm gonna make my mixture. I forgot to mention earlier about what I would have used the clear plastic for. And basically Ew, I did not like that sound. Basically what you can do is attach a clear plastic sheet to the grid to kind of seal it off, and that way the roots in here can stay a little bit more hydrated. You don't have some of that moisture escaping from the back. You can avoid the roots kind of wrapping inside of this net. Although that's good, it kind of tells the plant that it's hanging onto something. It makes it a lot harder for repotting. You can get some nice roots to really form inside of there and trap in that humidity. So yeah, I think I'm gonna do a follow-up video of making some lazy moss poles with the plastic sheets, or the clear sheets, once I can get a hold of them. So that is it. I know that this moss pole is not for everyone. Some of you are probably like, what the heck did she just do? I get it, but I just feel it in my gut that this is the way I'm gonna go this year. After doing it this way, I don't even want to use a regular moss pole anymore. And that's that. So I am slowly going to be transitioning all of my current poles to the lazy moss pole. I think I'll have enough to do over the next few weeks to film some repots with me. And since we are switching now to the 2 video a week schedule, which makes me kind of nervous, but I think it's going well so far. I've been filming like crazy and I am pretty ahead of the game. So I think we're all right. Thank you for watching another video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up because it helps our visibility on YouTube a lot. Thank you for everyone who's been here. Thank you to new subscribers. Thank you for all the love, all the comments, and we will see you in the next one.